Okay, then we have Kim. Kim, I'm done thinking the order that I remembered you coming in. Good evening, Kim. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kim Clays. I am in transition right now. Worked in automotive for multiple years. I'm helping Desiree right now with some of the homework events, which the Rewire for Wealth is one of them. Hi, Barbara. It's nice to see you face to face. And I too thought the book was pretty incredible.
Fantastic. Okay, Lisa, have you read the book?
I haven't,
Okay.
but I think I've listened to a few podcasts that Barbara has been on. So my name is Lisa Hilton. I am a real estate syndicator. I provide opportunities for business owners and entrepreneurs to invest in tax efficient real estate investments.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And Angie.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to the topic today. I'm doing real estate and investing. I've been getting into syndications and alternative investment opportunities. So I'm excited about getting my mindset wrapped around your topic. So I haven't read the book, but I'll grab it really soon today.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And V-Lynn, good evening. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm so excited to be here. I am a business development and digital marketing coach. Visibility and impact are my thing. And I'm a crowdfunding for business consultant as well. And Barbara, I have to say that I've been following you for years. My first introduction to you was through the book Overcoming Under Earning. Because 10, 12 years ago, that was really where I was, doing too much for too little. And although I haven't read Rewire for Wealth just yet, I know a little bit about your story. I'm so excited to be here to meet you personally and to be a part of this. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Shirley Schofield.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation. I ordered the book today, so looking forward to getting an overview and then definitely reading the book and taking advantage of the work that you ladies have already mastered. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. And May, I'm not sure if you're able to come on camera. If not, if you're able to come on audio, we'd love to have you introduce yourself. If she's close by, if she can see.
She said she can't talk right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what about Flo? Flo, if you're available, if you're not able to talk or come on camera, feel free to put something in the chat.
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation. Hi, Desiree. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you. You look great.
Thank you. You as well. I have not read the book. I will be ordering it, and I am just excited about the topic and being a part of the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Demita, good morning. Good evening. How are you?
I am great. Hold on. I'm trying to get, oh no. Hold on. Okay, I think I'm here.
You're here. We hear you.
Okay, sorry. Hi everyone. How are you doing?
Good.
I am great. I am going, heard a lot about the book. I had not ordered it, but I wanted to get more information. When I got the invite, I was like, well, this must be the time. So I wanted to reach out and become a part and see what it's about.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
All right.
Good evening, Regina. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Good evening. I'm Regina Smith from Detroit, Michigan. I'm the owner of Sassy Lane Creations. I have the book and I'm still reading the book because I am doing the exercises, and you can't just run through the book. If you're going to do those exercises, you got to be real honest with yourself. So I'm still reading it and working on the exercise, but it is so awesome. And I also listened to you on a podcast with someone else. I think it was on January 1st. I said, oh my God, I've got to hear her, because it was just so much you said and so much you've experienced. And I thank you for sharing that with us, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Dawn. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. How are you doing today?
Awesome. I'm doing all right. Thank you. I'm Dawn. I'm up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And we are real estate investors. And I have the book and I am about halfway through. I'm also working on the exercises. And so I've been reading it for a little while because I'm reading other books as well.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you so much. And that's a good start for us. So now I would like to introduce you to Barbara Husson. Is Husson, is that correct? Houston or Husson?
Close, it's close. It's Barbara Hewson.
Houston, okay.
Hewson.
Houston,
So
Houston.
I didn't have anything planned, so I'm not sure how you want to proceed.
Well,
I thought you were doing a book club and I was just gonna show up and answer.
Well, we are doing a book club and we're happy that you've shown up, but it would be great for you to share your story. You know, I mean, I
Okay.
get read a story about, you know, because it's a fascinating story and I think it's just such a realistic story that a lot of people can relate to it. And we just feel really blessed that you're willing to share it.
Oh, yeah, so most of you haven't read the book, and so most of you don't even know my story, so I won't bore you. It's good. Okay. So I have a story that I would never want to live it again, but I'm so glad it happened because it's given me lots to write about. So I was raised in a wealthy family. I never thought about money. It's like, you know, water to a fish. It was always there. And whenever I asked my parents about money, mostly my dad, I asked my mom about money and she'd say, ask your dad. And I asked my dad about money and he'd say, don't worry, which I loved. I thought that was great advice because I didn't understand money. I just wanted to spend it. And I married a man who was a stockbroker. So he was perfect, right? Well, I found out very early in my marriage that he was a compulsive gambler. And every year, many times a year, for 15 years we were married, I'd find out he was gambling my money, my inheritance away. And I continued to let him manage it because that's how terrified and intimidated I was by anything financial. And finally, after 15 years, we got a divorce. And I decided money's not my thing. I don't want to deal with money. Well, I have this theory that if you don't deal with your money will deal with you. And I got tax bills for way over $1 million, almost 2 million. For back taxes my ex didn't pay, for illegal deals he got us in. I did not have anywhere close to $1 million, not anywhere even close. My ex had left the country and my father wouldn't lend me the money. And that's when I knew I had to get smart. I had to. And so, you know, I read the books, I go to classes, I do all the things you're supposed to do. And it's like my eyes would glaze over, my brain would fog up. I just couldn't get it. But I had 3 daughters. They were young. One was just a baby. I was not going to raise those girls on the street. And I really believe that when you have a commitment, like a down to your toes, no backdoor commitment, the universe revolves to help you reach your goal. And I was a journalist at the time, writing for the San Francisco Business Times, and I got hired for a freelance project to interview women who were smart with money. And that book changed my life. I not only got smart about my money, but I wrote my first book, Prince Charming Isn't Coming, How Women Get Smart About Money. And suddenly I had this whole new career. I was traveling all over the country doing financial education for women, but I couldn't make money. So I interviewed women who made lots of money. And I want to tell you that I started making 6 figures, 3 times what I'd ever made before that book, before I even finished writing that book, Secrets of 6-Figure Women. And then I wanted to teach others what I was learning, and I started giving Overcoming Under Earning workshops, which somebody read my next book, Overcoming Under Earning. So thank you very much. And thank you. Oh, Belin, thank you. And then I wrote my next book, Sacred Success, in which I really came out of my spiritual closet, because spirituality played such a huge part in my journey, but I didn't have enough courage to write about it until then. And then this most recent book, Rewire for Wealth, in which I added neuroscience to the mix. And so meanwhile, I write these books and I had my master's in counseling psychology. I was trained as a therapist. So I started doing financial counseling and wealth coaching, and I call myself a financial therapist. So that's my story.
That's a great version of it. There's some of the things that were really that jumped out at me was one that when you came home or whatever that day, and your father and your ex-husband were sitting there, and just the way that they broke to you the information, like you lost communication with them for a while because it was either them or their ex-husband. To me, that was a really good choice that you made to continue to stay in that relationship. You also talk about what your headset or your mindset was to be able to stay there and continue that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? That point.
Yeah, the way I found out my husband was a compulsive gambler is I think we were married 3 years and just had my second baby. I was working as a career counselor then. And I came home from work one night, the children were asleep, and I walk in the living room and there is my father and my mother and my husband, the gambler, sitting there very quiet, very tense. You could just cut the tension with a knife. And my father says, "Sit down, Barbara, we need to talk." And my heart's beating. And I sit down and he said, "Did you know that because we were looking for a new house because we just had this baby and we needed a bigger space." And he said, "Did you know you do not have money to buy a new house? Did you know that your husband is gambling away your money?" And I was so shocked and I was so humiliated and embarrassed that I said, out my mouth came the words, "Yes, I know." And my father started screaming and yelling and screaming and yelling and talking about how sick my husband was. And I was in absolute shock. And my parents walk out of the house and my husband sits there and nobody says a word. And he looks at me and he said, "I promise I will never do it again." If you've ever been in a relationship with an alcoholic, you have heard, or any kind of addict, you have heard those words. And I really wanted to believe him, but it wasn't. And I never stopped talking to my parents until my father didn't lend me the money. I talked to them, but nobody in my family ever talked about my husband's gambling. They just acted like it didn't happen. So it is crazy.
It's interesting. So would you mind sharing who your father was? I think that's.
Yeah, my father was the R of H&R Block. So here's this guy, he helped people with their finances. But he absolutely, I remember when my first book came out, Prince Charming, and I told that story in that book. And my father and I were on a radio show, and this was so interesting to me. And the hostess asked my father, "Why did you tell her not to worry? Why didn't you talk to her about money? Why did you tell her not to worry?" And he said something that really kind of struck me because I was always furious with him that he didn't. He said, "Because I didn't want my girls to worry, my 2 sisters and my mother and I." And that's his generation. That was his headset. That's where he was. Pissed me off, but that's where he was.
Another great moment was when you asked your mother, and your mother said, "Don't talk about it, it's dirty," or something to that effect. Do you remember that?
My earliest, this is an interesting exercise. Okay, I'll just answer that, and then maybe we can do the exercise.
Okay.
It would be fun. In fact, let's do this exercise now. Okay, you want to do an exercise?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
So here's what I want you to, it takes 2 minutes, if that. So I want you all to close your eyes. And I want you to go back to when you were really young. And I want you to see what comes up when I ask you this question. What is your earliest memory of money? What is your earliest memory of money? Now, I want you just to see what comes up, and if nothing comes up, that's okay, because it will later, but just for now, I want you to picture that earliest memory, and then I want you to freeze frame it like it's a photograph. In that moment, you made a decision about yourself and money. And that decision has probably been running your show, controlling your behavior, but it's long forgotten. And that decision has nothing to do with reality. It only has has anything to do with your interpretation of what happened. So I can talk about my earliest memory, but I'd love you to open your eyes. And if anyone wants to volunteer, I would love to hear what your earliest memory of money is.
I'll go.
Mm-hmm.
My earliest memory is that you always had to work hard for it. We always had to be doing something, working for the neighbors, whatever it was, sweeping the streets. So there was always a scarcity of it. So I knew I always wanted to have money, but with it comes the concern that somehow maybe you're going to be in that position again all the time. So I'm always struggling with that.
So Angie,
Mm-hmm.
is that's great. So you can see where that came from, but I would love for you or any of you, that was pretty general. If you have a specific memory, a very specific memory of being told that, for example.
Of being told about working for the money?
Whatever, a specific memory about money. That was general, like you were told growing up that it was hard work. And I think you've always known where that came from.
Yeah, I mean, well, here, I'll give you one example that was a little later, but in my childhood, I remember wanting to be a cheerleader, and I went to a private school. We couldn't afford to do it, and I had to convince my mom to let me try out. And she kept saying, I can't afford it. We can't do, basically that we didn't have the money. And I remember telling her, I will work at the convent. And I did. I worked at the convent to earn the money to become a cheerleader. But I knew I had to come up with a plan B in order to be allowed to do that.
So that's a remarkable memory.
Yeah. Because it was embarrassing for a parent not to be able to write a check and, help your child.
But what do you think you decided at that moment when she said we can't afford it?
And I was going to find out how to make that money.
Have you noticed that that's how you've approached just about everything in your life, including money?
Probably.
That you're going to find a way to do it?
Yeah.
That there is a way? I mean, what that says to me at that moment in time when you were what, 12, 15, 13, I don't know.
I was in about 12.
Yeah, you found a way, and you would always find a way. That moment, that was a great memory. Anybody have anything else that you can't possibly make the connection of how
I know when I read the book, I got to that question, and I remember being about 8 and always have to ask my dad for money in hopes that you would get it. So it always had to, for me to be a good reason for him to give it. So I noticed that during my life, I've always had to give a good explanation of why I deserve money.
That's beautiful, Tricia. Is that how you pronounce your name, Tricia?
Mm-hmm, Tricia.
Tricia.
Mm-hmm.
Because you couldn't just have it because you were enough. Because just you deserved it just for being you. It's like you had to prove yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big burden.
Mm-hmm. So how did that manifest, Tricia? Because you were sharing last time, you were really sharing.
Yeah, I wouldn't ask just for the fear of I'm not good enough. So I wouldn't ask. And even in doing my business, I always gave a lower price out of fear of asking, because I didn't think I deserved it. You're not going to get it, so why bother asking? And that's where I really discovered where I was like, I'm not going to go. I just didn't ask. I would always give, but I wouldn't ask.
Has that changed for you?
Yes, it has. It has. So I
Good.
asked. I
Good.
mean, I like I said, I just got that reading a book, and when I discovered that, I just broke out and cried because it was like all my life I've been living from that little 8-year-old that I don't deserve it. So no matter what I did, I never saw myself with money or having money because why? You're not going to get it. You're not good enough. You know, you're not worth it. And I used to find myself struggling with my children when they would ask me for money, and then they would go to give me this good explanation, like, no, 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 just ask me, just ask me. I don't need an explanation. Just ask me, and it's either yes or no. But I just refused to have them give me this draw out explanation because that's how I felt. Like if it wasn't good enough, we're not going to get it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Love it.
So Dawn, I loved your story about your relationship with your father and your children. You wanna share?
I don't really remember what exactly I shared, but I do know that after reading in the book, I came to a realization about asking. So it's not specific to money, it's about asking. And for me, we grew up very close to cousins, and they would go to my grandparents' farm and we would go to my grandparents' farm. And my parents would always say, don't ask for candy. Or they would always give us birthday money. Don't ask for it. That's rude. And it was always don't ask. And my cousins, we played with them. They were all like the same ages as us, 4 and 4. And they would go, oh, that's my cow. And we would ask our parents, why is that? Like, why do they have a cow and we don't have a cow? Well, because they asked. They probably don't really have the cow, but Gito doesn't know how to say no. And don't ask for a cow. It's rude. And it was always, they were brats. We knew they were brats. They were entitled, and we were always got that message. And I found out too that something that happened to my dad that affected that when he was about 10, there were 10 kids and it was in the 50s. And he was supposed to go to town with his parents. It was his turn. And that uncle who had those children, that uncle cried and begged and asked if he could go. And my grandparents took him, and my dad's sisters found him crying in the barn because it was his turn. He didn't get to go. So we always grew up with that them doing those things and that feeling of taking. And even my uncle and my dad were given each a quarter section of land from their father, but my uncle didn't like the one that he was going to get. So he complained and we got the one that he was supposed to get, which was a better piece of land. But those are the stories that went around that family and those kids, and we're still close to them, but at that time they were brats, and we were, that's just rude. And so that's where that story came from.
It was something, I don't remember, Kim, were you there? It was a beautiful story you mentioned about, and something how your children, your 2 children now, your son, who's on the call?
I did, with money, I did teach them to be responsible for their own money because my son would not go to Goodwill and buy clothes. And so I did give them a clothes allowance when they were 8 and 9, the 2 older ones, and the younger ones got it when they were 10. But they learned how to handle their own money at that age. They had a wardrobe, and they had to maintain their wardrobe. So they had town clothes, and my son would come home from town and he would change out of his jeans because he liked Walmart jeans as opposed to Goodwill jeans. And so he would change out of his jeans so he would not put a hole in the knees because it wasn't the fashion at the time. And so he kept his clothes in good shape. And so that was one of the things that I did with my kids. They had autonomy over their money at a very young age. with guidance, and they are all very good with their money,
Wonderful.
but
What about-
sometimes stressed.
What about you? What about you? There was something, I can't remember, something about you. You were good with, are you good with money? I'm trying to remember.
I'm not. I wasn't ever good with money. Not that good with money. I mean, I can save a buck, but yeah, receiving money is or like asking for it and putting a value on my time has always been a struggle for me.
That's what it was. And
Mhm.
there was a reason why it was, and it has something to do with your mother or father, but I
I-
remember. Okay.
Yeah, I mean the taxes and everything and the farm and my mom was supported like on the farm, and she didn't have an education, so she wanted us to get a good education so we could get a job and support ourselves in case things went south. But yeah, I mean tax season was really tough, and I did share that my parents, because they were on the farm, then they were sitting around the table for like a week or two, and it, yeah, pretty grumpy. And so it just, taxes has been a real struggle for me, just not knowing if I can pay the tax bill, if there's like a bill or whatever. And so, yeah, I think I shared that last time.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, because you being able to pay a credit card off of full or paying the balances off.
Mhm.
So Barbara, I'll let you pick it back up and ask these ladies one by one. Let's just share, because this is really lots came out last time when we were sharing a lot of aha moments, even that things that you probably didn't realize yourself, but through speaking to it, and especially now with Barbara there being able to speak into it. So what do you think her message came from, Barbara?
I
Dawn?
think all of us sitting here have inherited our relationship with money. It has been so much shaped by most of us, by our family, by our parents, but also by our culture, by the church, by our schoolmates. It's been so shaped. And this is why I was so excited when, I don't know how many years ago it was, 2015, 2016, when I discovered neuroscience, and I decided to put neuroscience into my work. Because what happens is when we are growing, we get certain messages, and those messages become embedded in our brain. And our brain determines our behavior. And the deeper those grooves are, those neural pathways that with the messages, the deeper those are, the more habitual our behavior is, and the more difficult, if almost impossible, to change. And that's the hardest thing I had with my clients. It's not teaching them the information, the basics of finances is the simple part. It's getting them to change their behavior. And so what I discovered is that shall I go on in this? And
yes, please. Yes. All
that
ears.
that the mind and the brain work in tandem, that the brain is a physical organ in the body. But what flows through the mind, this is the mind, but the mind, which is a non-physical organ, what flows through the mind is the thoughts and the feelings. The thoughts and the feelings is what shapes the brain. So if you could go back and really work with your thoughts and your feelings in a very structured way, you can efficiently and fairly quickly change those neural pathways so they can become weaker, and it's easier to change your behavior. So Desiree, that is not the question you asked me at all. You asked me how her family has, and it is, so I got a little sidetracked, but it is clear.
That's okay. It's all good. There's no agenda.
It's clear that our stories, the stories we are telling about our past and about who we are, is what is controlling our behaviors. And one of the things that's important to do is to see that those were our parents' messages. This was our interpretation of our parents' messages. That's what was ingrained and embedded and deeply dug in our brain, but it's not the truth. It's not our truth. And to be able to weaken the grip those messages have and create our own story, to create a story that works for us. I've long said that financial success is an act of individuation. And individuation is a psychological task that we all should have done by the time we were adolescents, and very few of us, especially girls, but very few of us have. And individuation means to individuate means to separate from our family of origin, to take what serves us, to take the values and the things that we love and cherish, and to ignore and to leave what doesn't. And that's really so much of the work.
Wow. I've never heard that reference before. So let's share. So Lisa, what's your story?
Yeah.
I'm going to call on all of you.
You know, it's interesting. My parents always fought about money, a lot. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So my father was the main breadwinner until he got sick, and then he couldn't work, but he had built apartments, so they brought in cash. But even the cash that the apartments brought in, like, there was a lot of fighting around how the money was used, and like people rushing to get the money from the tenants at the first of the month before like the other one, so that way they would be able to have it to do whatever they wanted to do, like in terms of my parents. But like impact on myself, I'm still trying to figure out how. I know it definitely impacts me for sure. I'm just trying to still figure out like how that shows up, you know.
Well,
you were married. I'm sorry, Barbara.
No, go on. You go, Desiree. You
No,
know
was
her. I was just gonna.
married? Did it show up in your relationship, or did it show up in like when like even like in your relationships?
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
So
Yeah.
wait, Lisa, what I want to know is, how is your relationship with money? Does it flow easily?
I want it to flow easily.
Yeah, I know you do.
I want it to flow easily. I'll say two things. One, to answer back Desiree's question, like, the other thing too is I grew up, like, I don't know, I think maybe it's a Caribbean thing where like the men should have money, and like, you know, they're always, you know, the man should have money. So like you're always looking for a man who is financially stable and like in a better position. And I see that even in my family now, like, you know, yeah. So, yeah. So that's what I'll say on that part. So I struggle with being in a relationship with someone who is unable to financially take care of themselves. Like, you know, yeah, is unable to financially provide at the same level that I can. It gets a little bit challenging, to be honest, on that part. And it's just like, as hard as I would like to stay in the relationship, but it's really hard because like mentally, like I'm like conditioned that like the guy should be able to like handle this stuff. And if you are handling it, it's like, okay, like, am I like taking care of you or stuff like that? Okay. So that's that part. And then regarding what you were saying to me, Barbara, I'm trying to remember what you said.
I said, how's your relationship with money?
Yeah. So I'm really good at saving money, managing money, and like I can manage money. I think my biggest thing right now is earning money. And thinking, even when I was working in corporate America, asking for what I was worth. Like I felt like I was definitely underpaid. And when I left, I felt that I could have gotten a better deal in terms of a package, in terms of leaving. And even though I asked for it, like, asked about it, like, it wasn't something, it was like, I don't know, it was like I just didn't know how to get what I really needed. So, like, now it's like negotiating is like something is really, negotiating is something that is very important to me as I'm building a business now. Like, saying no to things that are just short-term cash solutions that don't necessarily align with my long-term vision, but require a lot of time that takes away from building the long-term dream.
So you're great with when you have money, but bringing it in
Yeah.
is challenging. Being with a man who has trouble managing it or bringing it in is also challenging for you.
Definitely.
So what I would love for you to do is look under that. Look at those, explore those. And how do you think that came from your family of origin? How do you think your family of origin, and you may not be able to look at that now, but how do you think that has affected you? They're arguing. They're constant arguing about it. I wonder, now I'm just guessing, I don't know, but talking about money might be a little hard. Maybe that's why it's hard for you to negotiate or to ask for what you want or to have spoken up in the corporate world. Because what happens, that when that affects us as a child and we don't have the words to describe it, what's happening, so our throat just closes up. We just close up because we don't want to have that trauma of the arguing. Just food for thought, Lisa. Food for thought.
Thank you.
It's interesting you bring up the Caribbean or the island. I'm from Jamaica, or our family origin is from Jamaica, and it's I've had the difficulty in relationships. I haven't been able to have any relationships where I felt the man could not provide for me, and I know that was part of, it's always been. I never looked at it as a problem because I say, okay, it's because that's the way, even in the Bible, they say that the man is the protector, provider, protector, and the woman's a nurturer and so forth. But I never even, took it back to anything to do with my heritage. That'd be interesting to see, but I've never been able to do that. No, I've never been able to date anyone that I felt was not able to be a provider, protector. I know that could always change. People can get sick and things can happen, but I needed to know that they were able to do that. And I think not even necessarily financially, yes, but even just to have that mindset. There's some mindsets that men have where it's okay for people to do both, and that's definitely okay. But I needed someone with that old-fashioned mindset that they were supposed to be taking care of their family. And I don't know, and I think where that really came from for me was that my father always worked, and he was a horticulturalist, which is designed these gardens and things of that type for large institutions. But as my mother always, when the extra things that we had in our life, like the dance schools and the modeling schools and the trips, it came from my mother doing the extra things on the side. And that's how I became an entrepreneur at 12 years old, saying, okay, well, if you want more, you do more. And that was never a problem. So I was raised that way. So if I wanted extra dance class, or if I wanted an extra outfit or extra whatever it is, I just was willing to do more and earn it and then be able to get it. And I know my first husband, but my father's he was stable, he was very kind and all that other good stuff. He was a good man, but he never had that kind of hustle, so to speak, in him. But then I know that at the end, when he was passing, my mother was the one still making the other things work, making the extras work. And I saw that in my ex-husband. And I think that was one of the triggers. I said, no, I didn't want that again. I didn't want what my mom had. So my mom still had dreams that were unfulfilled. She still wanted to do certain things that she was never able to do because maybe she just didn't have the time or the ability to do those extras. And I didn't. I saw the same personality type in my ex-husband. So I said I didn't want to do that. I needed someone who wanted it as much or more, or had that mindset that they were supposed to be doing it. So it's interesting, that's why the value of you ladies sharing. It's not just for yourself, but it's also for all of us that's listening, because I would have never made that connection before. So thank you for sharing, Lisa. So, who else, who's next? Regina.
And when I heard my earliest thoughts of that was I'm the oldest of the 10 siblings. And by being the oldest, I always felt like it was hard for me to ask for something because there were so many, I'm thinking so many people had to be taken care of, but I would ask for money from my dad and you wouldn't get it. And I just started learning that money was scarce. It was really scarce to me in my home. It was hard to come by. I felt like I saw my mother take from, like they say, rob Peter to pay Paul. I saw a lot of that going on. And my thoughts was, I don't ever want to be in a situation where I have to be asking. I actually came to the thing where I didn't want to have to be in a situation asking men for no money. I just didn't want to be there. And because I saw that my dad was the one that was bringing in the money, so I felt like men were the ones who had the money. So when I started working, I know I worked hard at me saving my money. I wanted to save my money. But then when I got married, I do see this coming up with this conversation, that when my husband would want to give me money to do something, I would tell him, no, that's your money. You can keep your money. Because I always knew I'm going to work and make my money, because I was a stay-at-home mom with my kids. But then when they got to a certain age, I went out and worked because I felt like I needed to have my own money, because that's your money. He said, why do you say that? I said, because that's your money. Do what you want to work with your money, because I'm going to do what I want to do with my money. And so money has not come easy for me. And I don't make decisions on, I got the money, I want to do this. Just say, I want to go here, I want to buy this. I got to figure it all out. Is there going to be enough? Will I be able to do this? And the thought of now making more money, that had terrified me for a while. I felt some relief today when we were talking in masterclass, that I'm learning to accept myself and see my worth and know that I can put the price I want on what I'm making. Whereas before I didn't think I was worthy of asking for a certain amount of money for my artwork. I can't ask nobody to give me that, but now I'm starting to realize, why not?
Oh, that's awesome.
Why not? If not you, who? Like we said the other week, who told you that? Where did you get that from? And I love when you just said that, Miss Barbara, when you said you have to leave your parents' story behind. Take what you can take from it, but create your own story. And I can see where I have influenced my story by what I experienced. And I also see where I pass that down in some ways to my daughters, and I don't like that. I just know I don't want them to be that way. So now it's time for me to do this. I heard a gentleman talking last night, and he was saying, we were supposed to get to a certain age, which you said about in the teenage realm. He said, when we got to high school, we were supposed to look at our lives and realize this is my world. How do I want my world to be? And then I was supposed to get rid of everything didn't work for me. And what worked for me, take that and create the world I wanted. He said, but we felt like what was being told to us was the way to do it. And we just kept right on down that path. So this has been really good to me, because I saw what money just was a scarcity to me. And that's for the longest time, that's where I've even felt, even with working, it still has been a scarcity for me. And I refuse to live there anymore. So now, well, Regina, what are you gonna do about it?
So Regina, read my book.
I'm reading it. I am reading it. Doing the exercise.
No, but what I love about Regina that I want to point out is because our brains and our behavior is shaped by the words we use.
Yes.
It's phenomenal how the words create our reality. And that I hear you using words like, I can do this, and I'm going to do this. And that is so powerful. It's simple, but so powerful. Just keep talking like that.
Yes. Yes. Yes, ma'am, I will.
Good.
And then, Barbara, we have a pleasure because there's 3 sisters on this call. Does Regina resemble Tracia, and they have another sister, Roz, that's on the call as well. So they have the same
wow.
story, the same parents, the same father, and the same mother. So Roz, you want to share? Are you able to share?
And Demita is on the call too.
Oh, Danita is okay.
Oh
So
my gosh.
all the 10 children, 10 siblings.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Probably my early childhood memory would be more about also having to ask for money and not liking that feeling. And so I told myself I'm not going to ever have to ask for money. I'll just have my own. And also I felt like there was a lot of like secrecy around money. Like my dad always like hid money. I found out where it was, so I would get some. But he was always like hiding it. I'm like, what are you hiding it for? So I think those are my two earliest childhood memory. And I could say how it affected me when I would like with my husband, or if he wanted to give me money, I'd be like, I'm good. I am good. I don't need yours. I got mine. And I realized that was crazy to keep doing that as I got older. Like it's really our money, you know, but I'm like, I have my own, so I was good. And then just removing like the secrecy of it. I'm like, I don't have to hide it. It's just money and it'll come and go. And then as I got older, I like what my mom shared, that she said it was just for, you were just trading in paper for what you want. So then I started looking at it as that, like it's only to trade in for things that I need. So it wasn't like something bad or you got to hide, or I got mine, I don't need yours, where it was like just to keep flowing, passing it around like that. So, but that's how I saw it, where I just feel like, nope, I don't need you to give me anything. I'm good. I can take care of myself, because I didn't like having to, I said I would never ask that.
So there, I really believe, after all the research and work I've done over 25 years, that there is a direct correlation between your ability to receive and your level of affluence. And that when we say, I don't want it, when the universe is offering it to us, maybe through a man, maybe through work, but when it's offered to us and we push it away, we are saying to the universe, no, don't give it to me. I think there's a real freedom in being able to receive the gift of money from whatever, without being dependent, but being able to receive. So I love that transition you made, Roz, with, wait a minute, why am I saying that? Sure, give it to me, give it to me. Not from a place of dependency or neediness, but from a place of freedom.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So meet Demita, you're in the same family. So what was your take on?
Hold on, can I ask a quick question
Yeah.
on a follow-up with what Barbara just said? I'm curious, like when I hear that, you know, something that comes up for me is I have been receiving opportunities of work, but the work that I'm receiving is not work that I want to do. And I feel really bad saying no, because I would like to have the money. It's just that I don't want to do that kind of work anymore.
But you're saying yes to your happiness, yes to your meaningfulness. You don't say yes. It's important to have boundaries.
Yeah.
It's important to have a strong hell yes and a strong hell no. That's healthy. This is not work I want to do. No. So you create space for work you want to come in. The question is, what do I need to do to attract the work? How do I need to think? What do I need to change within me to attract the work I want? So hallelujah for saying no to work you don't want. Start figuring out and manifesting and being very clear on the work you do want.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh, good. You got that, I could tell.
Okay, thank you. Teresa, Shirley, Tamita, who's ready to share?
Okay, so for money when we were coming up, what I can remember, it was a lot of us. So my dad was tight with money. I must admit that. And so I know when we would have lunch money or whatever we need, field trip, whatever it was, like Trisille mentioned, you was just hoping that you go to sleep and wake up and that the money would be in the china cabinet for you for the next day for the event. So I can honestly say, I mean, there was a lot around money. And I remember there was times my mom would actually um, take the money from my dad's pocket and so she could have money. And I used to didn't understand why would we need to do all that because I knew he the one that worked, my mom did not. And to fast forward, I became a single parent, and I remember teaching my children that you'll always have. And I always remember not focusing on the amount of money that I made, but I just kept saying, but we'll always have, because I just kept saying what we didn't when I was coming up as children. So when I went with my children, I always kept saying, well, we're always going to have, you're never going to have a shut-off. We're always going to have. But I don't know how I just developed that. I just kept believing that that was going to be the case, that you'll have the money when the money need to be there. And I would say in my present relationship now, my husband is not he didn't do finance as well as like I would want him to do finance. I'm gonna put it that way, how I would want him to do. Learning later, lots later in life about that. But I would say by me keeping, I knew it would come. I just kept that doorway open, and I don't know if it's because of me liking numbers and monies or whatever it is. I just always felt that would. And so I was saying the 28 years I've never paid for anything when it came down to him, because I always felt there's enough money. I wasn't like just Roslyn and say, well, I didn't need your money. I found out if I never ask for it, I'll never get it. So I started asking, and I noticed from one day I woke up, I'm like, you know what? Every time I ask him for money, he leaves the money here. So then I knew, because he didn't grow up with just give money, I knew in order to get money, you just ask for it. And so that's what I know I developed over time. You just know it's going to be there because you actually going to get the money. So that's all I could say I did, because I saw it was so scarce, but I realized if you keep asking, then you'll get it. So that's where I'm in with it now.
Interesting. What about you, Kim?
Oh, yeah, the whole exercise, the going back and remembering the earliest memory brought up a memory for me that I didn't realize the decision I had made around it. I mean, I knew the memory, but when so the memory was when I was about 5, I remember my parents arguing about my mom working. And my dad was very adamant that she was going to quit because she was having problems being pregnant. So she didn't want to, but she did. And I think the decision I made at that time was it's not as important for a woman to work. Her job doesn't matter as much. That you're supposed to sacrifice for the family and not be as interested in what you want to do. So,
and how do you think that's affected you in your adult life?
Oh, I've definitely thought less of my job than my husband's. His is more important. Which
is that something? Is that something you'd like to change now?
I went through a period where I did change it. I didn't realize where that came from though. But I did have a conversation with my mom, gosh, not that long ago, probably about the same time that I decided to make the change. And that she told me that if it wasn't for the era that she grew up in, she would have been a career woman, not a stay-at-home. When she did go back to work, but she would have made up more of a career out of her life than being so focused just exclusively on the family.
Well, it's just interesting because you're in career transition now.
Right.
But this
Yeah,
comes
again.
up.
Yeah, it's a different transition than it was when I decided to focus on exclusively, like, it was after my son graduated. It's like really focusing on a career. And it's not that, I regret anything or anything like that. It's just the perception of how I've approached life in having that devaluation of anything that I do.
Wonderful.
So yeah, I really like the what are the 3 steps? It's recognize.
Okay, you're off the hook. So there's
Thank you.
there's 3 steps to
Okay.
rewire your brain, to change the
Right.
wire. And the 3 steps are recognize, reframe, and respond differently. It took me about 4 or 5 years to boil this down. But these 3 steps, while they're extremely simple, very simple, they are massively difficult to do because they take so much discipline, because your brain wants to go back to the old way. So it's recognizing a negative thought, but recognizing it a certain way. So let's say you have a thought that I'm not enough, or there's never enough. The thought is there's never enough. And what the thing is, the brain has what's called confirmation bias, that it will only see, it will only hear, it will only act on what confirms its beliefs. So if you have a belief there is never enough, you will not see, you will not hear, you will not even acknowledge that there's any evidence of there's more than enough. It's the same if I have a belief I'm not enough. You won't even see or hear or get all the instances that are telling you you're more than enough. And so the key is to recognize the negative thought. There's never enough, or I'm not enough, but you recognize it with curiosity. You recognize it with curiosity, and you separate yourself from the thought, because the thought, it's just a thought going through your head, like a gazillion thoughts. They're not necessarily true or not, but they're probably conformed to your beliefs. And so you recognize the thought, oh, isn't that interesting? That's the curiosity. Isn't that interesting? I'm having a thought that I'm not enough. Oh, isn't that interesting? I am having a thought about, not there's never enough. I am having a thought about there's never enough. Oh, isn't that interesting? I'm having a thought that I need to buy those designer shoes. No, I am having a thought about it. So that separates you from you. And then when you observe that thought, when you recognize it with curiosity, the second step is to reframe it, is to see it differently, is to give it a different spin, a different interpretation, because everything is simply our interpretation. And basically, it's doing a positive affirmation. So if there's, like, for example, I had a project to do, and I just kept, and my team kept wanting me to do this project, and it scared the hell out of me. I was terrified. And I kept hearing in my head this voice that said, you don't have what it takes. You can't do that. And I remember, okay, I'm going to rewire that. Oh, isn't that interesting? I'm having this voice that says, I don't have what it takes. I am having a thought that I don't have what it takes. It's not a truth, it's just a thought. And then I had to reframe it. So how could I see this differently? And I reframed it to, I can handle this. In fact, I wrote it on a Post-it note, and this months ago, and I still keep it because that thought still keeps coming back. And I can handle this. And I just started saying, I can handle this. And you repeat the affirmation over and over again, because it's a repetition that got it embedded in your brain in the first place. So it's repetition of a new thought that will weaken the old one and start embedding the new one. And so you just, oh, there's plenty. Or I'm more than enough. I can handle this. You keep repeating. So you recognize, you reframe, you say it differently. And then third, you respond differently. You respond as if that new affirmation, if that reframe was true. So every time I said, I can handle this, I responded differently. And instead of saying no to my team, I said, okay, I'll do it. And then I didn't want to do it. And so I made myself start doing the research. I made myself. And within weeks, it started to get easier and more fun. And it became actually fun. So it's recognize, reframe, and respond differently. In the recognize and the reframe is how you change your mind, your thoughts, but it's the responding differently is how you actually weaken the old neural pathways and start building new ones. So does that make sense? I said that awfully quickly. Okay.
Perfect.
So Adrienne, do you want to share? Then Teresa, then Lynn, and you're
Okay.
I can say yes, Barbara, what it is, it started off like the way to recognizing recognizing what that thought is. Like you asked the same question, like what's the first thought we have, as a child for money? When you recognize it, and then I guess you can take the next step, Is that?
And the thing that for me to recognize, it's not so much the thought as the feeling. When I'm having a negative thought, there's often like this sinking feeling in me, or this, I don't know, I just feel, something it feels negative. And so sometimes I have to trace that thought. What is that thought I'm thinking? Oh, I'm thinking I'm stupid. I'm having a thought that I am stupid. It's only a thought. Isn't that interesting? How can I reframe that? Oh, hell, I'm so smart. Now, here's the thing about reframing. You don't believe it at first. Did I believe I can handle this? No. Do I believe that I'm smart? No. But you say it over and over again, and it starts getting embedded as a belief. That's why if you want to do one thing to start rewiring, stop telling your old story. Stop talking about how hard things are. Stop telling how scared you are. Stop telling all those old stories that you've been telling for a lot of your life, and start speaking about what you desire as if it's happening. Instead of saying what you don't want, talking about what you want. And the way you know you're rewiring is when you don't feel like yourself. When you feel like, oh, this is bullshit, or this is just not me. That's a sign you're rewiring.
Okay, who else wants to share? Teresa, thank you so much for joining us. You want to share? Or Lynn? Oh, this is such good stuff. Shirley.
I'll share, because this has brought up quite a few things for me. And one of the reasons that I was so grateful when overcoming under-earning came into my life. My earliest memory of money was actually good in that my dad started teaching us about money. We had coin collections, we had bank accounts, and then he died. And I was 7 and everything changed. I remember trying to hold some of the principles that I learned, and I had a little savings purse, and I had it hidden in my room. And I wanted something, so I went to find my purse, only to find it was empty. And that was devastating. Not just that it was gone, but there could only be one person who could have taken it, and it was my older brother. And I actually said, I'm going to get my money back. And I went in his room and I hunted around. He didn't try to hide anything. The majority of my money was in one place and I got it back. Well, he told my mom. I got in trouble. And she did not support me, knowing that I had a savings purse, knowing that he had no money because he had asked her for money. And she didn't support me. I had to give him my money, and I walked away totally devastated. And it took me decades before I came to terms with myself and money and how I felt like the whole deservability in earning it, who I was earning it from, because there was always some guy who was signing my paychecks and telling me that I was worth X dollars in the amount of pay and or increase. And I managed to maneuver through it, but I did not trust men and money. I did not trust men with my money. And I guess it was, I mean, I was a single parent. I raised my 2 kids. We did really great. I taught my kids differently about money. They were, I mean, very responsible. Both of my kids were just the best. My son has passed away, but my daughter has continued to do very well in her profession. And I got her started in the business industry that she's in and continued in. I got to the point where I had to say, I'm done. I could not do it anymore. Where some guy, and forgive me because it was always a Caucasian man that was telling me my worth, and I couldn't do it anymore. And that's when I decided, and prayerfully so, to release myself from that. And I said, if I have to do it myself, I have to do it myself. And those are the words that I spoke when I left, when I kicked my husband out. It's like, if I have to do it myself, I might as well do it myself. I have no use for you. So then I got introduced to overcoming under-earning, because I still didn't realize what had happened and how I got on this path of doing so much for so little. And that book, with the questions and the introspection that it required, really got me on a path of saying, I've got to do things differently. I've got to start seeing me and my true worth and projecting that, because that was part of it too. I was very shy. It was hard to ask for what I felt I deserved. I could go talk to my girlfriends about it, but I couldn't talk to the people who had control of it. And what they saw was a weak woman who, well, I can do whatever I want. And even in the negotiating, well, we're going to give you this. And I was like, well, I've done this, and this. Then it was all about the performance. I've brought in this, and I worked for some big companies and had $1 million, revenue streams out of my business lines. And I still found myself having difficulty asking for what I really felt like I deserved. And so as an entrepreneur, it's been a different journey, but on the same track. And with the overcoming under earning, because it did it as part of a study group. And it got me on the path of saying, there's something in here that I have to address. And I learned NLP. I actually worked with a couple of NLP practitioners to really understand some of the firsts, because I think that's typically where we don't know to go to understand what has happened in the interim until we get to the first. And I remember at 4 years old, one of the biggest questions is, what was your first disappointment? And at 4 years old, my dad had a friend who was an artist. So my brother and I were sitting for a portrait. And I was inquiring as to why we had to come there week after week and sit in the same dress and the same clothes and the same pose. And I said, you have a Polaroid, you have a picture. Why do I need to sit here? My dad blew up. And I thought, okay, that's where my worth got crushed. And subsequent events, just like you talked about, and it reminds me of the spirals of a tree. You know, a young tree has few spirals, but the older the tree is, it gets more spirals. And, you know, the 100-year trees, you can't count the number of spirals that it has. And that's how our lives are, that's how our brains are wired. And so I found something called hypnosis. And not only did I get some hypnosis therapy, I actually became a certified hypnotherapist because I was like, I see too many people, too many women who are going through the same struggle. And the gatekeeper is saying, your beliefs are this, and we're going to support your beliefs. I don't care what you want. And that is really what helped me in the latter years. So last decade and a half, maybe 15 years. And I still find that I am looking at, you know, the worthiness and the deservability. And I can see how I have grown, because over the last, I guess, 5 years or so, my prices have tripled. I've got a team. I'm doing things differently than I ever have in my life. And a lot of it is because of the change in my relationship with me that has been a change that has affected the change in my relationship with money. So I can earn, I can save, I can spend. And when those thoughts still try and creep up, I know how to handle them. And I really attribute a lot of it to overcoming under earning and the work that I started then that has been able to support me all this time. So thank you, Barbara. I am really excited and very much more interested in reading Rewire for Wealth now, but I know that you've got all the neuroscience in there as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you read the book and you made the determination. But then I don't know if you realize what you're doing, but you were actually, with the hypnosis, with the NLP, you were rewiring your brain. I mean, it wasn't enough just to say, I want to change. I mean, you could have changed, and lots of people do, but you really expedited the process.
Yes.
Completely by doing that extra work. And that was beautiful. Only the sun is so much in my eyes. I got to do something here. So I'm moving here. So, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, we can still see you.
That was a great story, Belin. I loved that.
Thank you.
That was a great story. So, you know, with the story, so we have this story as Barbara. And so what's the next step? Well, also 2 questions here. How does the neuroscience and other things attribute to, I mean, because that to me is just like, it's like an amazing added perspective on the things, as opposed to just being a conversation that just really just gives it another level of, oh, how else does that impact as far as what you're sharing and what you're teaching and what you see and what individuals should know?
You know, I don't really understand the question. I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Really, the neuroscience, how is that, like bring that into this equation as far as how does that enable you to recognize, and how would we be able to recognize more if we, you brought that in, you did that for a reason. What was the reason? To have a better understanding, to have a deeper understanding, to be able to see it from a different perspective?
I guess it's my own evolution. Because I learned very early when I was going through all my stuff and trying to get smart about money and going to classes and reading books, and I just couldn't get it. I couldn't get it. And then I started going to a psychologist. And I remember going to a psychologist, and I remember sitting down the first day and I said, Daniel, I really want to understand money. I really want to learn about it. Help me, I really do. And he looked me in the eye and he says, no, you don't. And I remember I couldn't argue. It was like all the air had gone out of my defenses. And it was at that moment I realized that the outer work of wealth, the facts and knowing the difference between a stock and a bond and how to save and how to negotiate, that's just part of the process. And when you can't get it, there's another prong, and that's the psychological. So for a while, I was focusing on that, the outer and the inner work. And then I realized how much my spirituality and my purpose for being on this planet was motivating me financially. Because it came to a point I wasn't motivated financially. I wasn't motivated by money. What motivated me by knowing that God had a purpose for me. And I realized most women, and studies have shown this, once we are financially stable, once we have food on the table, and we're not motivated by money. We want to make money, no doubt. But what motivates us is what we can do with the money, how we can help others, how we can make a difference. So I started integrating that into my work, the outer, the inner, and the higher work. And then about, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I discovered neuroscience. It was an article on neuroscience showed up in my inbox, and I read it, and it was like, oh my God, this is a missing piece for me. And I started applying it to myself, and I realized this just speeds up their learning curve. This just helps women get past their resistance, gets past their fear in a much smoother, easier way. So that's how I put it. And so that's what I call the deeper work of wealth, which is the mind-body, the mind-brain connection.
And then I noticed also you studied and implemented the Course of Miracles, that spirituality component of it. How did that contribute to the work, to your work?
Well, that has shaped my life. And I guess my life has shaped my work. But I found A Course in Miracles when I was at my lowest ebb. And the Course of Miracles calls itself a course in mind training. And it is by understanding the principles. Is anyone familiar with the course?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is anyone not familiar with? Lots of you can't. I can't see it. But the Course of Miracles is a course in mind training. And I guess I was doing the neuroscience before I knew it was neuroscience. I was doing the mind. And the principles in the Course of Miracles is really what got me through all my hard times, and it has continued to support me. So that's when my last book that came out in 2014, that's when I really came out of my spiritual closet and talked about how important spirituality was. That there is something greater than ourselves. And that when we can tap into that and use that in our journey, whoa, we can be a force. We can be an unstoppable force.
So your suggestion is to recognize and then to reframe. So we reframe it by utilizing the different tools that you talk about in the book as well. And ladies, I want to also share, we'll elaborate more towards the end because we're reaching that close, is that Barbara has agreed to do a 4-day retreat, live in-person retreat with us. And Kim, do you want to share a little bit more about it? And then so in our wrap up, I want to make sure that she leaves us with some tools, but also for those of you who find this valuable, to think about, okay, let's plan to do this where you really have 4 days to dive deep. We will only have the pleasure, of Barbara for 90 minutes, but be able to go deeper. So Kim, do you want to just share briefly when it is and what we're thinking about? And
I was thinking I have to take myself off mute first. So the dates we were considering are October 15th through 18th. The venue is Cedarbrook Lodge in Seattle. We did check that out, Barbara. That looks like an awesome location. Tentatively, this is tentatively, but everything looks like it would align for those dates and at that location. And it would be, I believe, Barbara, when we discussed the days and kind of the agenda for the days would be Friday afternoon through midday on Monday.
So we're going to just finalize, but start thinking about, again, what we're talking about and where you are now, where you want to be and where you need to be. Because again, after you read the book, you'll just realize and do the exercises, and not only just once, but do it over and over again, because you'll realize it's work. And it's not that we're all at such a point in our lives that we deserve whatever it is that we want our life to be. It's not too late. It's obviously not too early, but just being able to make sure I'm going back through my notes so that I can make sure. So just keep that in mind. But so Barbara, what would be our next steps? I mean, so you say recognize it, but you have so many exercises in here and so many different things. What else should we be asking ourselves? You talk about listening to our inner voice. You talk about, being able to make those changes. What would you?
One of the things that I think is really important when you talk about money, when you talk about everything, remember, whatever's going on in money in your life is going on in other areas of your life. You can't slice up your life like a pizza and say, okay, I'm just going to work on money, because it's going on in other areas. But one of the things that I notice is, and I think is an important concept, is the whole idea of resistance. And notice where you are in resistance. Resistance is that feeling, that thing that goes, I'm not going to do this and you can't make me. And really, all resistance is the result of an internal conflict. A part of you wants to, and a part of you doesn't. And that to me, can be one of the most transformational exercises you can do, is to start, like when I went into that psychologist office and I said, I really want to get smart with money. I really do. And he said to me, no, you don't. And I couldn't argue. And that's when I saw there was a part of me that wanted to get smart. And there was another part that didn't, that was terrified. If I took control, I'd lose everything. I'd screw up. My parents wouldn't love me. A man wouldn't. I had all these reasons. And so I think one of the really easy things to do is look at where you are in resistance. Look at where a part of you wants to and a part of you doesn't. And really explore that. Don't try to resist your resistance, because whatever you resist persists. But really look at, what am I afraid of? What would happen if nothing changed? What would happen if everything changed? What is my payoff for change, staying where I am? I think that's just a really good place to start, because probably everyone here has someplace they're in resistance, where they are not moving fast enough, or where they want to go.
Beautifully said. And I think a lot of it too is going to be like people say, okay, I want this, but I don't know how, and that's kind of an easy, way to say, okay, like you say, my childhood's been like that. I've been this way all my life. So I want to, but I don't know how, or I want to, but I can't.
Actually, that's a very legitimate thing. I don't know how, because most of us don't.
I know.
I always used to say, when I gave overcoming under earning groups, I always said, okay, tell me why you're not earning more. And they would give me all this list. And I would say, the only legitimate reason is you don't know how, because no one ever taught us. But every other reason is self-imposed. It is a belief that is not an accurate excuse. So I don't know how, because no one ever taught us this stuff. No one ever did.
And I think a lot of people probably think that they can't be taught. A lot of people think that I was born this way has been all my life. A lot of people don't believe that you believe. And that's why I think your story is so important, to see how that change did happen, that you did make that change, and that it could happen, even no matter what. We can make those changes and those.
Look at all the stories we've heard here. Look at just V-Lynn. Look at what she was saying, how she changed everything. That's why I think it's so important. That's why I do what I do. I think it's important to have role models. I think it's important to see other people who have changed, other women just like you. Because people think, oh, that's just the way I am. Well, it's not. It's the way you were shaped and formed but you can reshape and reform.
I know some of the things that you cover in your book. Again, the first part is like awakening, so it's like kicking the habit, body, mind, and spirit, that connection. Some people think this is just the money is not connected to their body and the mind and the spirit. The wealth connection, how you define that, rewiring. You talk about the rewiring response. You talk about, like you said, recognize, reframe, and respond differently. And then you talk about the hardwiring, the power tool, resistance work, the power tool, reparenting, the power tool, repetition, and then, directing your destiny. But those are the parts of the book that you actually you go deeper, in all those different areas. What should be our next steps besides sign up for your,
No, so I'm going to say two things. First, and I didn't write about it in this book, but I've written about it in another book. I really believe, after 25 years of working nonstop with thousands and thousands of women, that our problems with money, our difficulties with money, has very little of anything to do with money. It has everything to do with our fear of or ambivalence about power, because we don't understand power from a feminine perspective. And really, any problem with you're having about money, it's really look at where you're giving your power away. And my definition of a powerful woman is someone who knows who she is, who knows what she wants, and expresses that in the world unapologetically. So essentially, our fear of power is our fear of making waves, of watering ourselves down so we don't upset the apple cart. But really, it's about taking our power back. And one of the things that I would like to share with you is I have a online community called the Wealth Connection. And I started it a couple of years ago because it was always my dream to have, like we have right now, with Desiree put together, which is so cool. What a great group you did. And I'm so honored to be able to show up here, to be able to get women together to talk about money as women, the inner, the outer, the higher work, the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual. And we have group coaching twice a month. We have experts every month talk about every aspect. We have a book club also. We have master classes. It's everything, and just talk about money, and we really work on where you're at and how to go from where you're at to where you want to be. So it's called the Wealth Connection, and you can go to my website, which is Barbara-Huson, Huson, Barbara-Huson, .com, and look under coaching, and it's called the Wealth Connection. It's my group coaching.
It's a fantastic program, and it's a fantastic program, and it's a registration. You said it was $47 a month or something of that type. So it's a very, very, very small investment for the return. I mean, and the return can change everything, and we don't know what that tipping point is. We don't know what we need to say or hear or feel to actually make that change. But we know the good news is now we know that we can change. We know that our mindsets and our habits can change. And so just being able to invest and just kind of take this journey to be able to make sure that it's done, I think it's really, really powerful. And I think what you talked about as women is important, because a lot of us I want to say a lot of us silence our power because we don't want to intimidate our partners. Maybe we don't want to be too overpowering. There's always that question about being too overpowering or it gets too overpowering, for whatever, whether it's our friendships, whether it's our family, whether it's our relationships, and just to know that we can actually do that in a feminine way, and we have the right to do that, and we can still maintain, you're beautiful and feminine and so forth, so we can still maintain that and still be able to accomplish our goals. What do you think?
I think you said that beautifully. I don't think I could add anything to that.
Okay. All right. So in our thanks, I would like for everyone, or I'm going to go around and just ask everyone to have their takeaway. What was your takeaway tonight? I think that And it's Tracia, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up? We just kept rolling, but I know that you've read the book a couple of times and so forth.
No, I'm just amazed. I'm just amazed at everything. And I'm just glad that I was able to read it to be able to start transforming my belief system for myself, because I know I struggled a lot when it came around to money and power. And like you say, playing small with men to not intimidate them or not be defined as an angry Black woman or bossy and that kind of thing. So you just play it small. And I really have just stepped into who I am and just proud of who I am and love who I am. And this is who I am. And I'm not going to shy away from it. So I just been enjoying who this woman is that I've discovered that I am. And it's amazing. So I'm excited about it. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, what about Kim? What was your takeaway? Share your takeaway from tonight.
I think my main takeaway is going back through the book again and seriously doing all the exercises. I read it through once and got a good concept of it, and it tied into a lot of previous coaching and those types of exercises that I was familiar with, but never applied specifically to money. And I truly see how it really does relate to all parts of your life, because yeah, what you said about it being part of the power equation, Barbara, makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, I'm going to go revisit all of that like right now.
Fantastic. Angie, what was your takeaway? I think you have to unmute. I think I muted you.
First of all, I'm really grateful. I usually have another class I'm on, and today something told me to get on this, and it's amazing when you receive things and they come just in the moment you need them. And it's nice to see a forum where all these wonderful, powerful ladies are sharing, and they're all similar things that we're all experiencing, and we are a community. So it tells us that we're all traveling and journeying in the same way. And I just look forward to reading your book. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. What about you, Lisa?
Yeah, yes, it was really good. Similar to Angie, I just saw this in my email and I was like, you know what, maybe I should join this. I'm really glad I did. My takeaways was manifest the work you want and, focus on who you need to be in order to, earn and bring in that kind of work to you. And a powerful woman knows who she is and what she wants. And I forgot the third thing you said, but
no, this is important for you. This is the last part you forgot, excuse me. But a powerful woman is someone who knows who she is, who knows what she wants, and expresses that in the world unapologetically, even if it's a no, especially if it's a no.
Wow. Yeah, I'm so grateful. Thank you. I need to definitely read your books. So yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. And what about you, Regina?
Thanks again for everything and coming and being with us this evening. And what I'm taking away, I love the fact what she said, real freedom is being able to receive. And I don't think I've always had myself in a place of receiving. If you're always trying to do it yourself, you're never open to receive. That I wrote down stood out to me, and the recognize, reframe, and respond differently. And I love the fact I'm having a thought that separates it from me saying, I feel I'm having a thought. What am I going to do with this? So, how I'm going to reframe that. I wrote all the different exercises, what she said to do. And I'm going to finish reading the book, continue reading the books. I've been reading it and do the exercise. But I feel like after tonight exercise, I'm really wanting to touch my heart and go really behind even more than what I just think on the surface, really get down in there and see what it is. What she said, it's all about power. What are you afraid of? Who am I going to be? I've always been in this framework. What is it going to feel like outside of this framework? Look at that. What's that all about? And that's the part that has made me a little uncomfortable, but I said, here we go, let's do this. Let's do this. So
Yeah, right.
thanks again. Thanks again.
What about you, Lynn? Your takeaway?
Oh, this has been so great. Thank you, Barbara. And I love everybody's takeaway. And I think for me, the biggest one is the power from a feminine perspective. I'd always felt like I had to fight. And then I declared my power, and I had friends to say, I'm leaving you alone. And, you know, was able to recognize, well, maybe you weren't the kind of friend that I thought you were, you know. But the whole knows who she is and what she wants and expressing it unapologetically in the world. I think there's a level of courage that just rose up in me at some point over the last decade, or maybe it was rising. And I'm really grateful that I'm there, but I also know that the work continues, because this tree with all of these rings can separate them out, but it is like peeling an onion. You got to keep peeling and keep peeling. And so I'm grateful to have as many tools in my toolbox as possible to do that and feel supported around it. That's why I love this group of women. The support and the camaraderie and the like thinking, you know. So many of us have gone through life in stages where we felt alone. We're not alone. So many of our stories are so intertwined, and I'm grateful to know that at this point. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can't wait to read the book.
We're grateful to have you. What about you, Adrian? You haven't shared this yet. What's your best takeaway?
Oh, definitely the Power Woman. I wrote down, my question to myself is, where are you giving your power away? And thank you, Barbara, for—
Adrian?
Yes.
I'm going to give you a hint. You know how you know where you're giving your power away?
How?
Wherever you're unhappy.
Mm.
Wherever you're unhappy, that is where you're giving your power away. Yeah, look at your eyes.
Thank you. Yes, this has changed a lot for me and answered a lot of questions. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for joining us. What about you, Dawn?
For me, what she just said about where you're giving your power away, but also I'm a firstborn like Regina. So what she said about receiving, I think that as firstborns, we're always serving, because we're taking care of our siblings when we're kids, and we continue just serve. And so receiving, and also the fear or ambivalence about power, and playing small and not being too bossy, because of course the firstborns are always called bossy. And and so then you take that into your adulthood, but then it comes off as bossy to other people, and people make comments, and then you start playing small. And so I think that those were my takeaways.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Roz, what about you? Thank you for sharing.
I would say, you know, even when I was sharing about, you know, I want to have my own, I realized that, like she was saying, receiving is good, but it also like put me like in a box, because you're so busy, like, I got to have my own, you're focused on that, instead of just learning to make the money and being able to share and give to others. I saw when I said that was like how it made me feel, like it sort of stifled or stopped everything from flowing, because I was so caught up on the wrong thing of just that I have to have my own, that I couldn't receive. And then how receiving is good, which I have learned to do very easily now, and I like to receive and give as well. But also about being powerful, and actually the last thing, like where you give your power to is where you're unhappy. That really just like, oh, I need to really look at that. And I enjoyed the book. I think it's one of those things that I will constantly do over and over. I have another month coming off, so I'll get to really dive in again and do some more of the exercises. But to me, it's just like I was in awe every time I was reading it. I was like, I couldn't believe like this is really like, wow. I mean, it was just so amazing to me to read it and make connections to it and understand some of the things that I've been going through, or even like seeing how my kids were and things like that. So it was really amazing. I'm glad you were able to join us, but it was just, it's an awesome book. And, you know, all the little nuggets you gave us, it's just been very awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Some of the ladies, I don't know if you have access to the mic, but we would love your takeaways. Shirley, Cheryl, Flo, Teresa.
Hello, ladies. I really don't like to speak, but I will. I do want to thank you all, and I want to thank Barbara and Desiree. And I will read this book, and then I've already made notes, and I'm going to translate them and send them to my girls and buy this book for them as well. So I have a 24-year-old and a 21-year-old, and I have so many notes. And so this has opened up so much for me. And I've been writing and bringing so much in, thinking about it. So thank you for sharing. If I didn't jump in and share, I don't want to take up a lot of your time. That's my personality. I'm prior military, and but I know that I took so much from this. What I wanted to say is I really appreciate that everybody that shared, because everything that you shared, I was able to, not everything, but a lot I was able to relate to, meaning that I came from a family that didn't have money. And when my parents fought about money, and my mom always told me that money was, you have to be able to carry on the family. You have to be able to support the family. You can't count on somebody. And so I'm talking too much. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you. And I did get a lot out of it. And I do understand that I started to realize years ago that I can't handle it all, but I can't wait to use the book, walk through the steps, have my girls walk through it, and figure out, I hope I didn't damage them. So I'm excited, and I really did get a lot from it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing, Shirley. And then we have the time, because every story, again, just either reaffirms or confirms, or, you know, just makes us feel better about, if we're having the same thought, that makes us feel better about having that same thought. And so absolutely, we just thank you. And it's great that you're going to share with your girls. So your girls are young, they're young enough. And so this is a perfect opportunity for them to, you know, if we all have that advantage at the 20s, in our 20s, to have this information available to us, our lives would be so much different. So yeah, thank you for not only taking away for yourself, but being able to share that with your girls. Thank you. So Flo and Teresa and Lynn and Kimley, any more shares?
Hi, yes. I wanted to thank you, Desiree and Barbara, for this opportunity. I haven't been able to be on the mastermind for several weeks. So I feel like being on there this morning and hearing about this meeting tonight, the timing was perfect for me. So one of my takeaways was the quote about a powerful woman. And I have to remember it. A powerful woman knows what she wants, knows who she is, what she wants, and is able to express it unapologetically in the world. I love that. And then also, I definitely will be purchasing the book, and I feel an obligation to share it with younger women, because that is one of the things that I'm really passionate about, is sharing my knowledge and experience in the world with the younger women in my life. So being able to apply the principles from the book as far as the reframing and everything, and actually sharing that with the women in my life. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. And Lynn and Kimley. Anyone else?
Good
Yeah.
evening. This is
Oh,
Kim Lee. Sorry I couldn't come on camera running from another meeting, but I caught the tail end of this. I was trying to get my phone to come on. I was almost out of power, but I'm telling you, I got the last 45 minutes and I am so looking forward to opening that book cover to cover. My power, that's why my money's funny. I mean, I really saw the connection. I do well. I don't do the consistency that I know I can. And that was a big tuck away for me to know where it's my power, it's not the money, it's how I'm owning my power. And then the part you gave about resistance. I have been in this battle with resistance for the last 4 or 5 months, and you brought such clarity to it. It's because there is a part that know I want it, I know I deserve it, I just get excited about it. But then there's a part of me that says, no way, Jose. And I can look at myself and I know, just do this. I'm looking at myself like, why aren't you just doing it? And it tied back to not just the resistance, but it's resistance to own my power.
But
I never
Kimberly,
knew the results to before.
Kimberly, let me suggest to you that
Yes.
all resistance, stubborn resistance, is really an act of self-protection. That you are actually protecting yourself because you're scared of what will happen if you do fly, if you do soar. So you might want to look at that as, how is your resistance protecting you?
Thank you.
And go back to that.
Yes, thank you for that.
And
Thank
Barbara
you.
is also one of the sisters.
Oh my gosh.
She's number 4 or 5 of the sisters. So that's so
Yes.
awesome.
I received that. Thank you so much, Barbara. It's truly an honor to be in this community and to meet you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for sharing. So Cheryl, I'm sorry, I think, were you about to, is it Cheryl or someone's about to start?
I was about to say something.
Yes.
Hi, Desiree.
Hi, how are you?
Good, I'm well. Sorry, I wasn't able to be on video earlier, and I only caught the tail end of this. But thank you, like, the last half hour in the middle of doing something else. But I hope there's a replay because so many things that these ladies shared, I relate to. I grew up without much money. My, mother was an immigrant. We got along with not much, and parents fought about money my whole life growing up. And, a lot of these stories I relate to. So all of this wisdom that you're talking about today, Barbara, like, I can't wait to read the book also, is something that I'm finally realizing late in my life. Like I'm trying to dig into it and being a part of female empowerment groups and changing your money mindset and things like that. And it is so valuable to learn this at a younger age and to pass it on to our younger female friends and just, anyone who grew up like this, I am very grateful for where I am now. I'm truly not anywhere near where I thought I would be at this age, but, I think really it starts with this, right? This mental, like, retraining your brain thing, and allowing myself to be bigger and grow to like my highest potential, because I know it's there, right? Like, I think it's there. I've always thought it was there. It's about, that whole retraining the thought processes around money and having things and being able to be powerful. So thank you for the reminders and the guidance and the book to help with more of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Okay, and we have someone, there's a 313 area code, last 4 digits is 4911. And then anyone else that I missed or skipped or didn't have a chance to give us your takeaways, it would be much appreciated. It's the best way of thanking Barbara for her time and her sharing is to be able to say that, so to know what your takeaways are, what you walked away from.
Hi,
Hi,
Desiree.
everyone.
Oh,
Yes, that's okay.
I don't know who's talking. This is Lynn Hunt.
Hi.
And similarly, I came in late. I had a dental appointment that went longer than I thought. So I missed the presentation. I'm hoping there's going to be a replay.
There is.
There is, okay. And my takeaway, it's so funny because just briefly, my history is a little bit similar. Well, it's pretty much similar to V. Lynn. I started, I learned from my dad about saving money, and I started at 5, 6 years old, putting money away in my top drawer, and it would come up missing all the time. So it turned out it was my older sister, 12 years older than me. She was 18, 19, routinely taking my money. And so my parents got on her case. They didn't take her side, they got on her case about that. And then I finally had to start, they took me to a bank and I opened up an account very early age. But my takeaway is that I didn't have the support so much as what I wanted to do. I had a lot of naysayers. My sister, older sister, told me when I was 27, why do you want to buy a house? Because I told everybody I was going to buy a house. Why do you want to buy a house? That's stupid. You know, nobody buys a house anymore. It's too much responsibility. Fast forward, she's 79, still living in an apartment. I have multiple properties and I have never regretted it. But I've had to deal with naysayers my whole life. I don't have so much a lack of confidence. It was that aspect that I had to fight. So that's my takeaway, and I want to read the book too.
This is the very first time we've had a book club meeting with so many people that have not read the book. It's amazing. The last time we had our book club on this book, almost everyone had read the book. This is very interesting. All right, just in closing, is there anyone else that has one last takeaway? And then we will.
Yes, hi, I'm Cheryl. This is my first time here. I was invited by Flo, but I did listen to Barbara Husin and Desiree, and I kind of resonate with a lot with Regina in the money issue, money thing, and the being a giver, so much of a giver that it's kind of hard to receive from other people. But I understand after listening to everybody, especially Barbara's concept of how your power is taken away. So that resonates with me a lot. And sitting here listening to everyone speak, it kind of, I kind of feel like I'm getting my power back. You know how you have that, she said in the 3 R's, where you recognize it, you reframe it, and then you respond differently. So I'm responding differently. I think I'm working on, even though I'm responding differently inside of my head, I also have to put that into action, you know, because it's one way to respond in your head differently, but then when you go to do it again, you revert back to the beginning again. So I really resonate with what, you know, was said here. I appreciate the invite, and hopefully we'll be getting the book because it sounds quite interesting. So I do want to read that book and join you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So ladies, I just want to remind you again is that we are planning a very, very special event at the end of October, and we'll finalize the details, and we want to send the invitation, It's going to be, you know, first come, first, you know, first response, I guess, first served. So when you get the information, let us know what your interest is, so that we can, you know, include you in the event. But it's going to be, and my thought, as I shared this morning, is that we all started our businesses, we're in business at some level because we had the confidence, we had the perseverance, and we had the focus to be able to do so. And I know that last year, you know, a lot of things changed. Last 12, 14 months, a lot of things changed. No matter where we were before, we were present, and whether it was the result of the coronavirus, or whether it was the result of the racial tension or the political tension or the economic tension or even the socialization, realizing that we were alone or having been in quarantine and just experiencing things that we never, ever experienced before in our lives, there had to be some adjustments in our mind. You know, it's just like, again, having a fire and saying, and there's ashes, there's something that landed in you, in your mindset, because we've had to pivot, we've had to maybe budget differently, we've had to, the feeling of lack could have come through, or the feeling of scarcity, or feeling of fear. You know, when are we going to be able to get our business back? When are we going to be able to make money again? How are we going to be able to make it? Are we going to be able to make it? All those things have had to come up to you, to these ladies during this time. So that's really important. It's imperative. It's not even an option for us to rewire our minds, rewire for wealth. Let's not go into 2022 with any of this residue from what's happened. And we're just still working our way through it. We've had people that got ill, people that passed, people that became unemployed, people that became divorced, people that came abandoned. I mean, all these things happened. And so we can't say that none of it is in our psyche. In some way, shape, or form, something is there, and we want to make sure that it's not, so we can go forward. And we're halfway through this year. So this year, the last 2 quarters this year will be very telling as to what the real deal is, like what our real takeaways were from this last year. But do not, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to go into 2020 without making sure that I am like tight, that my mind is tight, my confidence, my focus, my power, everything is intact, because we cannot afford, I can't afford another year or 2 years wandering around or figuring this out. We need to figure it out so we can go forward and make sure that we're as strong as we need to be, and that we're going to have whatever we want, because it is possible. And we all know that it's possible, and we all know that it's done. And if this is what the doctor orders, then I'm in. So just make sure you let us know if you're interested, and we'll make sure we send you an invitation. Make sure you get the book over and over again, work it through it, stay in touch, attend, but just really, really, really take away something that was tonight and hold on to that, because it was a gift. It's all a gift. By Barbara sharing her time and her expertise is a gift. Do not let it go wasted. Barbara, what would you like to say in closing?
Night. Bye. I loved being with you all. This is an amazing group. So thank you, Desiree, for the invitation. You all are great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Night.